Before we begin this epic tale, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel for more incredible Viking stories, and comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. Your support helps us bring these ancient sagas to life. Now, let's dive into the story of a blind warrior whose visions changed everything. The morning mist clung to the wooden longhouses of Valdris like the breath of sleeping giants. I sat on the weathered steps of my dwelling, listening to the familiar sounds that had become my world since the fever took my sight 7 winters ago. The creak of leather boots on frost-hardened earth, the distant clang of iron on iron from the smithy, and the low murmur of voices that always seemed to quiet when I drew near. My name is Thorstein, son of Grimwald the Bold, and I am the shame of my lineage. "Move aside, blind fool," came the harsh voice of Astrid Ironheart, our clan's most feared shield maiden. Her heavy footsteps echoed past me, followed by the softer treads of other warriors preparing for the morning's training. I pressed my back against the doorframe, making myself small, invisible, a skill I had mastered over the years. The irony was not lost on me that in a culture where a warrior's worth was measured by the strength of his sword arm and the keenness of his eyes, I possessed neither. My father had been legendary for his prowess in battle, earning his name by charging alone into a Saxon shield wall and emerging victorious. My elder brother Gunther had inherited that same fearless spirit and now led raids that brought honor and silver to our people. And then there was me, Thorstein the blind, Thorstein the useless, Thorstein who cannot fight. The great horn of Valdris echoed across the settlement, calling all warriors to the training grounds. It was a sound that once filled my heart with anticipation, back when I could see the sun glinting off bronze shields and feel the weight of a proper blade in my hands. Now, it only served as a reminder of what I had lost. "Brother," came Gunther's voice, approaching with the confident stride that marked him as a leader of men. "The sun climbs high, yet you sit here like a beggar at his own gate." I stood slowly, my hand finding the familiar grooves in the doorframe that guided me. "What would you have me do, Gunther? Join your warriors so they might laugh at the blind man stumbling through their drills?" His heavy hand fell on my shoulder, and I could hear the creak of his leather armor. Gunther had always been kind to me, kinder than most, but even his sympathy felt like pity. "Father believes you still have value to the clan. He has spoken of sending you to live with our cousins in the eastern fjords, where you might find peace away from the warriors who matter," I finished for him, "away from the battles that define a man's worth." The silence stretched between us, filled only by the distant sounds of combat training. I could picture it clearly in my mind, the circle of fighters, their movements sharp and deadly, their eyes bright with the thrill of competition. I had once been part of that brotherhood, had once felt the burn in my muscles and the surge of battle joy in my veins. "Thorstein," Gunther said quietly, "perhaps it would be better—" "No," the word came out sharper than I intended. "I will not be shuffled away like some broken tool. This is my home, these are my people, and I am still a son of Valdris." Gunther sighed, and I heard him shift his weight. "Then what will you do? You cannot fight. You cannot raid. You cannot even hunt without aid. The other warriors see only what I cannot do," I interrupted. "But what if there are other ways to serve? What if the gods have different plans for those they test with darkness?" It was a hope I had clung to for years, though it grew thinner with each passing season. The gods of Asgard were warriors themselves, lovers of battle and glory. What use would they have for a blind man? As if summoned by my doubt, the wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of snow from the distant mountains, and something else, something that made the hair on my arms stand on end. For a moment, I could have sworn I heard the beating of massive wings overhead, though when I tilted my face skyward, there was only the whisper of wind through bare branches. "I should go," Gunther said, his voice carrying the weight of unspoken words. "The men expect their leader to show them proper form." "Of course," I replied, forcing my voice to remain steady. "Go show them how a true son of Grimwald fights." His footsteps retreated, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the growing certainty that something was changing in the world around me. The air itself seemed to hum with anticipation, like the moments before a thunderstorm breaks. I made my way carefully down the familiar path toward the heart of the settlement. My bare feet found each stone and root through long practice, my outstretched hand brushing against the wooden walls that guided me. The sounds of daily life surrounded me, children playing, women weaving, elders sharing stories by the communal fire. It was a symphony I had learned to read like others read runes, but today something was different. The conversations seemed more urgent, the laughter more forced. I paused near the great hall, pressing my back against its timber walls to listen. "Riders from the south," someone was saying, 3 of them bearing news from the coastal settlements. What manner of news? This was the voice of Olaf the Grey, our chieftain's most trusted advisor. "Ships," came the reply. "Foreign ships with strange sails, moving north along the coast." The scouts counted at least 20 vessels, maybe more. My blood chilled. 20 ships meant hundreds of warriors, possibly thousands. No trading expedition required such numbers, and the description of foreign sails ruled out other Norse clans. This could only mean one thing: raiders from distant lands come to test the strength of our people. "Have they made landfall?" Olaf's voice carried the weight of command. "Not yet, but they move slowly, as if searching for the right place to strike. The coastal villages have already sent their people inland." I pressed closer to the wall, straining to hear more, but the conversation had moved inside the hall. My mind raced with the implications. An invasion force of that size would not be interested in a single raid. They would be planning something much larger, something that could threaten every settlement in our region. And here I was, the blind son of a legendary warrior, unable even to swing a sword properly, let alone stand in the shield wall when our people needed defenders most. The rest of the day passed in a blur of whispered conversations and hurried preparations. I helped where I could, carrying water, holding tools for the weaponsmith, listening to the elders' tales for any wisdom that might prove useful. But always, I felt the weight of my inadequacy pressing down on me like a physical burden. As evening approached and the longhouses began to glow with firelight, I found myself drawn to the old shrine at the edge of the settlement. It was a simple place, just a circle of standing stones, carved with runes that honored the gods of Asgard. My fingers traced the familiar symbols as I had done countless times before. Thor's hammer for strength, Freya's knot for wisdom, and in the center, the image of the All-Father himself, Odin One-Eye. "Lord Odin," I whispered to the gathering darkness, "you who sacrificed your eye for wisdom, you who understand the burden of sight lost for knowledge gained, if you hear the words of a worthless blind man, show me how I might serve my people. Show me how to be more than the shame my father carries." The wind picked up again, colder now, carrying with it the promise of winter's approach. I knelt before the shrine, my hands pressed flat against the frost-hard earth, and waited. The sounds of the settlement faded as families gathered for their evening meals, leaving me alone with the whisper of wind through stone. That was when I heard it, the soft rustle of feathers, as if some great bird had settled nearby. My skin prickled with sudden awareness, and though I could see nothing, I felt the weight of eyes upon me. Ancient eyes, filled with knowledge that spanned the 9 realms. "So," came a voice like distant thunder, "the blind son of Grimwald calls upon the gods for aid." I did not lift my head, though every instinct screamed at me to flee. The voice was neither young nor old, neither cruel nor kind. It simply was, like the mountains themselves. "My lord," I managed to whisper, "I would serve, but I know not how." Silence stretched between us, and then I felt something brush against my mind, not painful but overwhelming, like trying to drink from a waterfall. Images flashed behind my sightless eyes, ships with black sails, cutting through grey waters, warriors with foreign faces and strange weapons, flames rising from burning longhouses. "You speak of service," the voice continued, "yet you know nothing of what service truly means. The ravens whisper of death coming on southern winds, of a darkness that would swallow your people whole. Tell me, son of Grimwald, what would you sacrifice to save those who scorn you? The question cut deeper than any blade. What would I sacrifice? My pride was already gone, my place among warriors long since lost. What more could the gods ask of a man who had already lost everything? Anything, I heard myself say. I would give anything to protect my people, even if they never know it was I who saved them. The sound that followed might have been laughter, or might have been the wind through bare branches. Anything, he says. Bold words from one who has never been tested in the fires of true sacrifice. Very well, Thorstein, son of Grimwald. I will grant you sight, but not the sight you once knew. Before I could ask what he meant, pain exploded behind my eyes like lightning. I cried out, clutching at my head, as visions poured through my mind in a torrent of fire and blood. I saw the foreign ships landing under cover of darkness, their warriors spreading like a plague across the land. I saw Valdris burning, its people cut down like wheat before the scythe. I saw my brother Gunther falling beneath the enemy's blades, his face twisted with shock and betrayal. But most terrible of all, I saw myself, future me, somehow restored to sight, leading a charge that would doom my people to destruction. In this vision, I was magnificent and terrible, my blade singing as it cut through enemy ranks. But my attack came at the wrong moment, broke the careful formation our defenders had maintained, and opened the way for the invaders to complete their slaughter. The visions ended as suddenly as they had begun, leaving me gasping on the cold ground. When I finally managed to raise my head, I was alone, beneath the stars, the shrine silent and empty around me. But something had changed. Though my eyes remained blind to the physical world, I could see things that had been hidden before, the flow of fate itself, the threads that connected all things, the delicate balance that held our world together. And threading through it all, I could see the approaching doom that would fall upon my people unless someone found a way to change the course of destiny itself. I struggled to my feet, my legs shaking from the intensity of what I had experienced. The settlement seemed different now, overlaid with shadows of what was to come. I could see the paths that led to salvation and those that led to destruction, could understand for the first time the terrible weight that the gods themselves must bear. The All-Father had given me exactly what I had asked for, a way to serve my people. But the price would be higher than I had ever imagined, and the path forward would require me to become something I had never thought possible. Not just a warrior, but a leader who could guide others away from the fate that awaited them. As I made my way back toward the longhouses, I began to plan. The foreign ships would arrive in 3 days' time, landing at the rocky cove 2 miles south of our settlement. They would come in the hour before dawn, believing darkness would hide their approach. But I had seen their strategy, had watched their scouts studying our defenses, had witnessed the trap they intended to spring. The question now was whether I could convince my people to trust the visions of a blind man, whether I could find the words to make them believe that their despised outcast had suddenly become their only hope of survival. I did not sleep that night. How could I, when every time I closed my eyes I saw the flames that would consume everything I held dear? Instead, I sat beside my cold hearth, turning over the visions in my mind like a smith examining a blade for flaws. Each detail burned itself deeper into my memory. The number of ships, the placement of enemy warriors, the exact moment when our defenses would crumble if nothing changed. But most haunting of all was the image of myself, sword in hand, leading the charge that would doom us all. The fates, it seemed, had woven a cruel tapestry indeed, giving me the power to save my people, while simultaneously making me the instrument of their destruction. The first pale light of dawn was creeping through the gaps in my walls when I heard the soft scrape of footsteps outside. A gentle knock followed, and then my brother's voice, "Thorstein, are you awake?" I opened the door to find Gunther standing there with 2 steaming bowls of porridge and the expression I couldn't see but could hear in his voice. Concern mixed with something else. Duty, perhaps. The burden of being responsible for his broken brother. "You look terrible," he said, pushing past me into the one-room dwelling. Did you sleep at all? Sleep comes hard these days, I replied, accepting the bowl gratefully. The warmth felt good against my cold hands. Tell me, brother, what news from the chieftain's council? I heard whispers yesterday of ships and riders. Gunther was quiet for a long moment, and I could hear him settling onto the rough wooden stool that served as my only furniture. It's nothing for you to worry about. Raiders from the south, but they're still far from our lands. Even if they do come north, our walls are strong, and our warriors eager for battle. His voice carried the confidence of a man who had never lost a fight, who had never seen his people's blood soaking into foreign soil. I wanted to shake him, to make him understand the danger that was coming, but I knew that my words alone would not be enough. A blind man's warnings would be dismissed as the ravings of someone desperate to feel important. How many ships? I asked, keeping my voice carefully neutral. The scouts reported 20, maybe 25. A substantial force, but nothing our warriors can't handle. He paused. Why do you ask? I set down my bowl, barely touched, and turned toward him. Because I've seen them, Gunther. I've seen what's coming, and it's worse than anyone realizes. The silence that followed was deafening. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentler than I expected. Brother, you cannot have seen anything. Your sight, my sight is gone, yes, but the gods have given me something else in its place. I stood and began pacing the small space, my hands finding the familiar walls and obstacles through long practice. 3 nights ago, I prayed to Odin for a way to serve our people. Last night, he answered. I told him everything, the voice at the shrine, the visions that had burned themselves into my mind, the terrible knowledge of what was to come. With each word, I could feel his disbelief growing stronger, could hear the shift in his breathing that meant he was preparing to humor a madman. Thorstein, he said when I finished, his voice heavy with pity. I know these past years have been hard for you. I know you feel useless, forgotten, but these visions, they're not real. They're the dreams of a man who wants so desperately to be needed that his mind has created 37 ships, I interrupted, not 20. The scouts miscounted because 12 of them are hidden in the sea caves at Raven's Point, waiting for the signal to attack. The enemy leader is a man called Valdemar the Red, and he wears a necklace of human teeth taken from his enemies. His second-in-command has a scar that runs from his left ear to the corner of his mouth, earned in a battle against the Irish monks 3 summers ago. Gunther fell silent. I could hear his breathing, quick and shallow, and knew that my words had shaken him. But would it be enough? Even if what you say is true, he said finally, even if you somehow know these things, the council would never believe it. A blind man claiming to receive visions from Odin himself? They'd think you'd gone mad from isolation. Then don't tell them it comes from me, I said, moving to stand before him. Tell them you had a dream, or that you heard it from a dying traveler, or that the runes spoke to you in the firelight. I don't care who gets the credit, Gunther. I only care that our people survive. But even as I spoke, I could feel the futility of it. Gunther was a good man and a brave warrior, but he was not one to challenge the established order. If the chieftain and his advisors had decided that 20 ships posed no serious threat, my brother would not contradict them, based solely on his blind brother's ravings. I'll speak to Olaf, Gunther said at last, though his voice held little conviction. I'll tell him we should send more scouts, get better information about these ships. But Thorstein, don't build your hopes on this. Even if there are more ships than we thought, our defenses are strong. We've weathered raids before. After he left, I sat alone with the growing certainty that words alone would not save my people. The visions had shown me the truth, but truth meant nothing if no one would listen. I needed proof, needed some way to demonstrate that my sight, my new sight, was real and reliable. The answer came to me as the sun reached its zenith and the settlement bustled with activity. If I could prove that I could see things others could not, if I could demonstrate the truth of smaller visions, perhaps they would believe me when I spoke of greater dangers. I made my way to the training grounds, where the sound of clashing weapons filled the air. My enhanced perception painted the scene for me in ways my old eyes never could. I saw the flow of combat, the subtle shifts in balance and timing that determined victory or defeat. More importantly, I could see the threads of possibility stretching out from each fighter, the paths that led to triumph or disaster. "Astrid," I called out to the shield maiden I had heard earlier, "a word, if you please." The sounds of combat faltered as the warriors noticed my presence. I could feel their eyes upon me, could sense their mixture of curiosity and disdain. Astrid's heavy footsteps approached, and I could almost see her imposing figure, tall and broad-shouldered, her blonde hair bound back for battle, her hand resting casually on the hilt of her sword. "What do you want, blind man?" she asked, her voice carrying the edge it always held when addressing me. "This is no place for those who cannot fight." I want to make you a wager," I said, raising my voice so all could hear. "Tomorrow, during the morning combat trials, you will face young Eric Berson. In that fight you will stumble on a loose stone near the eastern edge of the circle, and in that moment of imbalance, Eric will land a blow that sends you to your knees." The laughter that erupted from the assembled warriors was like the barking of wolves. Astrid had never been bested in fair combat, had earned her place through strength and skill that few could match. The idea that a beardless youth like Eric could defeat her was absurd. "And what do you wager, seer?" Astrid asked, her voice dripping with mockery. "What does a blind man have to offer warriors?" "If I'm wrong," I said, "I'll leave Valdris forever. I'll go to the eastern fjords as my father wishes and never return to trouble you with my presence." The laughter died away. This was no small wager. It was my entire life, my connection to the only home I had ever known. "And if you're right?" asked Eric himself, his young voice cracking slightly with nervousness. "If I'm right," I replied, "then you'll listen when I tell you what the gods have shown me about the danger approaching our shores." Astrid was quiet for a long moment. I could feel the weight of her consideration, could sense the wheels turning in her mind. Finally, she spoke. "Very well, blind man. Tomorrow, we'll see if your visions are worth the breath it takes to speak them." The rest of that day passed slowly, filled with whispered conversations and sideways glances. Word of my challenge had spread quickly through the settlement, and I could feel the anticipation building like pressure before a storm. Some viewed it as entertainment, the mad, blind man making a fool of himself one last time. Others seemed troubled by the certainty in my voice, by my willingness to wager everything on what appeared to be an impossible prediction. As evening approached, I made my way to the shrine once more. The standing stones seemed to hum with power in the twilight, and though I heard no voice this time, I felt a presence watching over me. The All-Father's ravens, perhaps, carrying word of my small test back to their master. "Lord Odin," I whispered to the gathering darkness, "I have set events in motion that cannot be undone. If I am wrong tomorrow, I lose everything. If I am right, perhaps they will listen when I speak of greater dangers. Guide my words and steady my resolve, for I am still just a blind man, stumbling through forces beyond his understanding." The wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of snow and the promise of winter's approach. In 3 days' time, the enemy ships would arrive under cover of darkness. In 3 days, everything would change forever. Either my people would be prepared for battle, or they would be slaughtered in their beds like sheep. But first, I had to survive tomorrow's trial. I had to prove that the gods had indeed granted me sight beyond sight, that the visions burning behind my blind eyes were more than the desperate fantasies of a broken man. As I made my way back to my dwelling, I felt the weight of destiny pressing down upon me like the sky itself. Tomorrow would determine whether I was a prophet or a madman, whether I would save my people or join them in exile and disgrace. The irony was not lost on me that my entire future, and possibly the future of Valdris itself, now rested on whether a young warrior named Eric could land a single blow against our most formidable shield maiden. But I had seen it happen, had watched the threads of fate weave themselves into that moment of victory. Unless I had misunderstood the visions entirely, unless the gods were testing me with false hope, tomorrow would prove that Thorstein the Blind could see farther than any sighted man in Valdris. And if I was right about that, perhaps they would finally listen when I told them about the 37 ships sailing north under black sails, carrying death on southern winds toward everything we held dear. The die was cast. Tomorrow would bring either vindication or exile, and with it, the first step on the path to either salvation or doom for my people. All I could do now was wait and pray that the gods would not abandon their blind prophet in his hour of greatest need.